Hello and welcome. My name is Tenzin Tharpa, and I'll be reading from my text, Patterns, Habits, and Free Will, and the Practice of Peeling the Onion, which is part of my Skillful Living series. You can download a print copy of this text and many others from my website at tenzintharpa.com. Just a reminder that although my work is free, as a Buddhist monk, I do rely on donations to sustain myself and my work. So if you find my writing of value, consider making a donation at my website. Patterns, Habits, and Free Will, and the Practice of Peeling the Onion by Venerable Tenzin Tharpa. Within Buddhism, the ultimate aim of one's efforts is awakening, to realize the true nature of oneself and reality. Awakening, also termed enlightenment or liberation, is freedom from mundane and habitual mental states, mental afflictions, and mistaken views, which are primarily embodied in the form of patterns. We are, as the old adage says, creatures of habit, navigating life by recognizing, creating, and following habituated patterns. Most of our intentions, choices, actions, and reactions are automated responses to both external and internal stimuli. This mental orientation of working with patterns is a truly amazing mechanism, allowing us to efficiently manage a vast amount of knowledge, experience, and behavior. A process that automates routine functions, thereby freeing mental resources for more immediate and important needs. Our patterns are similar to apps on a phone that run invisibly in the background, making the user experience simpler and more efficient. However, although being highly beneficial, when misunderstood or operating out of balance, our patterns can become problematic. Problems occur when we lose sight of the nature of our patterns. These patterns then run amok, operating unsupervised without accountability, in which unproductive, negative, and even harmful patterns operate unseen within our subconscious, continuously creating chaos and suffering. When speaking about patterns and habits, most of us think about patterns pertaining to work, study, behavior, etc. However, far more interesting are our subtle and hidden patterns. Few of us recognize that the majority of our traits are merely patterns of conditioning instilled in us by our families, peers, and culture. Our patterns can take many forms. Even personality can be seen primarily as a collection of acquired patterns. These patterns often exist as habituated loops of thoughts and behaviors that we are unaware of or can't find a way out of. Some of these patterns are patterns of thinking, such as views, intentions, attitudes, opinions, choices, bias; patterns of emotion, such as anger, greed, competition, jealousy; patterns of mood, such as anxiety, vulnerability, depression, laziness, negativity; patterns of action, such as aggression, contention, addiction; patterns of reaction, such as sarcasm, cynicism, contention, fear, lust; patterns of behavior, such as etiquette, interaction, energy levels, etc. Other unique patterns are conformity, comparison, one-upsmanship, or the desire for drama. But most insidious is our incessant thinking that often torments us by drowning us in irrelevant and unproductive negative thought. Out of all of our patterns, the most important and fascinating are our patterns of view. View in this context can be understood as our perspective, our viewpoint, or outlook, our accepted or assumed model of reality, the way we interpret and understand ourselves within our environment. Buddhism asserts that the holy grail of all spiritual quest lies in the realization of right view, the correct ontological model of reality. Within its most basic understanding, the Buddhist path can be explained by right view and wrong view. Simply put, to possess right view is to be awakened, whereas possessing wrong view is to still be abiding in ignorance. For most of us, our lives feel like an out of control roller coaster ride, one moment in elation and the next in desperation. But when we begin to obtain right view, this correct understanding of ourselves and our reality produces contentment and an acceptance towards life. It is at this point that the roller coaster ride begins to smooth out, with its highs and lows feeling less immediate and intense. Life becomes lighter and more manageable, as if a heavy weight that's been carried for a long time has been removed. Understanding our traits, emotions, and personalities. The nature of our traits, emotions, and personalities is often greatly misunderstood. In particular, the way we hold them as purely binary opposites: peaceful versus angry, diligent versus lazy, carefree versus serious. This dualistic interpretation, in which we see these qualities as merely good or bad, is overly simplistic and ultimately problematic. As an alternative, we should strive to understand our traits, emotions, and personalities as spectrums, possessing a full range of qualities. With that said, clearly, we can discern some of our traits as less positive or productive than others. On one hand, we have emotions like hatred, greed, and envy, which lack any beneficial aspect, while on the other hand, emotions like anger, which although being potentially destructive, can also be an appropriate response to injustice or violence, giving us the ability to react effectively with appropriate action. Meaning, anger, when utilized properly in a controlled manner and at an appropriate intensity, can result in a positive outcome. Anger, like all our traits, exists as a spectrum of varying value, quality, and intensity, ranging from mild irritation to uncontrollable rage. Furthermore, traits like ego, aggression, and competition, which, although often deemed undesirable, can still be appreciated for their successful evolutionary role in our survival. As a monk, people often assume that I never get angry or feel strong emotions. This is not true. My aim has never been to eradicate my anger or emotion. Generally, I feel the same emotions I always have, but in a more controlled, healthy, and appropriate level. Other than purely destructive emotions, we should accept the full range of our traits as that which characterizes healthy human life. We should accept ourselves and our current level of development as works in progress, existing as dynamic evolutionary processes in a state of constant change and improvement. Therefore, the work at hand is to skillfully guide our experience of our traits towards the more productive, healthy, and wholesome range of their spectrum. Understanding free will. Free will can be defined as one's ability to make deliberate, intentional choices, recognizing the various impulses that arise involuntarily in the mind, and to choose which among them to accept or to abandon. Although the existence of free will is sometimes debated, Buddhism assumes its existence. Concepts like karma and personal responsibility rely on the premise that there is an agent of free choice who generates causes and experiences their results. However, although accepting the notion of free will, Buddhism posits that our will is not as free as we may believe, asserting that our choices are influenced strongly by our past experiences. The fact is, most of us employ very little free will, with some utilizing almost none. We believe we are making free choice and that our views, intentions, actions, and reactions are intrinsic, spontaneous, and deliberate. However, the truth is, most of us exist primarily in a state of autopilot, following deeply rooted habitual patterns. I'm often surprised that the topic of gaining more free will is rarely discussed. Equally, I'm surprised that no one ponders what attaining more free will would actually look like. Buddhism asserts that we operate from pools of past knowledge and experience that exist in the forms of patterns of thought and behavior. We then draw from these pools when interacting with our reality. As far as what possessing more free will would look like, it would mean existing at a higher level of awareness, living more spontaneously and authentically within the present moment. It would mean operating from our most current and accurate view of reality, allowing for wiser choices, thus leading to more satisfying and productive results. Behind our patterns, our drives and intentions. To understand our patterns and habits, we need to understand their sources, which are our drives and intentions. At our most primal level are our drives. The term drive can be defined as a strong need or desire, an intense impulse that initiates, influences, and encourages external or internal behavior. Our drives are existential, instinctual, and biological in nature, and are often attributed to our animal nature. The list of human drives is extensive, depending on which categorization you follow. Some are fear, desire, greed, power, pleasure, procreation, safety, defense, social status, justice, vengeance, altruism, freedom, independence, achievement, curiosity, wonder, appreciation, idealism, honor, order, organization, physical activity, physical and mental well-being, etc. This includes the drives to improve, create, to express, to share, to bond, to feel, to explore, to experience, to exist, to love, to be accepted, to belong, to measure up, to grow, to possess, to learn, to impress, to move, to explore one's potential, etc. When examined closely, you may notice that this complex list of drives is not easily sorted into wholesome and unwholesome. This is where our intentions come in. Where our drives pertain to our more primal impulses, our intentions are often characterized through choice and free will. Intentions are the reasons behind the things we do. For example, from the drive of thirst arises the intention to get a glass of water. Intention can be defined as the purpose, reason, or plan that initiates external or internal behavior. Intentions can arise as patterns as well as from free will. Within Buddhism, understanding the role of our intentions is paramount in understanding ourselves in reality. The Buddha himself redefines karma from action to intention, with the two terms often merged into intentional action. Intentions are where the merits of our actions are found, that which determines behavior as wholesome and unwholesome. In addition, intentions also dictate the desired quality of our actions and behaviors. For example, doing quality work or sloppy work. Working with patterns and habits. Understanding our relationship to phenomena. Phenomena, either external or internal phenomena being thoughts, intentions, desires, choices, etc., are often not the causes of our problems, but instead it's our relationship to phenomena that is problematic. For example, some of life's more intriguing aspects, like desire, power, money, technology, are themselves not a problem for most of us. However, for some they are a source of great anguish. Let's use desire for an example. For most of us, our desires are manageable, meaning we can partake in them without unhealthy consequences. However, for some, their desires are overwhelming and often destructive. The problem is not desire itself, but instead what point of the spectrum of desire one is drawn to. For example, to the unattached, reasonable, and healthy end of the spectrum, or the opposite, extreme, and unhealthy end of the spectrum. Buddhism asserts that phenomena itself is ethically ambiguous. It is our relationship to the phenomena, our intention, and how we utilize them that ultimately dictates their value. Money can be used to create prosperity or to fuel war. Technology can be used to save lives or take lives. Education can be used to free minds or imprison minds. Transcendence, not suppression. When working with destructive emotions, desires, and behaviors such as anger, lust, jealousy, they can become particularly problematic when attempting to suppress them. Often advice is given not to suppress negative emotion, but to try to express them in healthy ways. However, this advice rarely works. In most cases, any way we express the emotion still reinforces it. Also, the advice focuses merely on the result of the problem instead of dealing with the actual cause. Conversely, Buddhism aims at transcending destructive emotions by working directly at their roots. Regardless of the negative trait, at the root is a neurotic energy that feeds it, a kind of fuel that intensifies and maintains its destructive nature. This fuel is no other than our own speed and busyness that drives our attachment, obsession, and exaggerated feelings of immediacy. Within Buddhism, the prescribed method for slowing down and gaining control over our speed and intensity is through meditation, mindfulness, and abiding in stillness. Understanding, the ultimate tool for awakening. Understanding, synonymous with wisdom and insight, is the ultimate tool for awakening. When we understand how our minds and emotions function, we can skillfully manage them. When we understand how our lives function, we can accept and resolve problems that arise. When we understand how our environment functions, we can flourish within it. When we understand ourselves and our lives, life is better. In Buddhism, the general method for cultivating understanding is summarized within the three great objectives, that of study, contemplation, and meditation. First, we study, learn, read, observe, etc. Then we contemplate, reflect, and ponder on what was studied in order to gain a deeper insight. Finally, we meditate on what was contemplated to gain an even deeper understanding. It's important to remember that we awaken through understanding, whereas both study and practice are merely methods used to help facilitate and inform our understanding. The practice of peeling the onion. In order to realize who and what we are, we often have to first discover who or what we are not. The expression peeling the onion can be found in all Buddhist traditions and refers to a method of introspection that can be applied to various aspects of the spiritual path. The practice can be seen as a form of self-therapy in which we explore the various aspects of our lives in order to gain a healthier, better informed, and balanced psychology. The actual method is a form of philosophical deconstruction used to expose and peel away unproductive habits, patterns, and mistaken ideas of who or what we are. Philosophical deconstruction can be understood as the continuous removal of layers of untruth until only that which is true remains. This practice or tool is not merely practiced in an analytical way, but more importantly, experientially, applied within daily life. Meaning, we observe ourselves in everything we do, watching our intentions, emotions, choices, mental and physical behavior. We examine and learn, slowly peeling away layer upon layer of unproductive patterns, behaviors, and social conditioning, both known and unknown. Whether it's recognizing that we get angry at the same point that our parent did, or identifying the reactive triggers we've inherited from our cultures. The tool of introspection allows us to understand ourselves at profoundly deep levels. The final aim of this practice is to reach the point where introspection becomes a constant state of mind, an open, alert state of watchfulness. This is where the onion begins to peel itself, and the task of awakening progresses effortlessly through its own momentum. Within this practice, you can choose to work with a unique aspect of yourself, or to work in a broader manner, examining yourself as a whole. Let's begin to look at different aspects that can be used in this practice. Concepts that can be investigated through introspection and deconstruction. Person, pertaining to the body, mind, and identity. Views and intentions. Patterns, habits, and free will. Perception, interpretation, and reality. Emotions, moods, feelings, and reactivity. Various traits as likes, dislikes, hopes, fears, attachments, and aversions. Social conditioning, pertaining to cultural orientation and proclivities. Or various philosophical concepts pertaining to truth, beliefs, existential inquiry, etc. Instructions for peeling the onion. The first step of this practice is to study and learn about yourself, which you've already started by reading this text on how your patterns, habits, and free will operate. Your sources of study should be broad, drawing from as many sources as possible, from science, psychology, philosophy, spirituality, etc. At the most basic level, the practice of peeling the onion is simply using mindfulness and introspection to become more aware of ourselves and everything we do, becoming more watchful of our intentions, emotions, choices, and mental and physical behavior. At a deeper level, we engage the practice through deepening levels of practice. How long it takes to achieve each level depends on your diligence and level of self-awareness. Below, I have offered 5 levels for practice. Level 1, recognizing and noting patterns. In level 1, you use mindfulness and introspection to observe your thoughts, behaviors, and patterns with the aim of honing your skills of awareness. You begin by learning to recognize patterns, habits, and reactions as they arise. This is aided through the practice of mental noting, which helps to highlight patterns. Noting was first shared in the text Meditation Basics and Mindfulness Basics, which you can download for free from tenzintharpa.com. Familiarize yourself with your patterns as they arise is the first step to working with them. Level 2, investigating and noting causes and results of patterns. Once you are skillful at recognizing patterns, you can then move to observing how they arise and resolve. What are their triggers, causes, and results? Often, merely recognizing the nature of your patterns is enough to begin to gain freedom from them. Level 3, discovering the space between stimuli and reaction. After gaining insight into the nature of your patterns, you can begin to investigate and discover the space that exists between stimuli and reaction. Once familiarized with this space, you can work to expand and extend it. For most practitioners, discovering this space is usually cultivated within calm abiding meditation, where it is first observed as the space between thoughts and the space between thought and action. Level 4, discovering your choice in your reaction. Next, investigate and discover the moment within that space that you actively choose to react, to decide it's appropriate to be angry, offended, jealous, kind, etc. For most people, this subtle choice are often subconscious. Level 5, transcending reactionary behavior. Lastly, as you become skillful at perceiving those moments of choice, you begin to gain the ability to choose not to react. By utilizing understanding, self-control, and abiding in stillness, you learn to transcend or float above your reactivity and the chaos of the world. Each time you choose not to react, you exercise and strengthen your free will, thereby incrementally awakening. Let's look at an example using the pattern of anger for our object of study. In level 1, you begin by learning to recognize anger in all its forms, as it arises throughout your day, from annoyance and irritation to fury and rage. Whenever anger is detected, you simply make a mental note of it, saying to yourself, anger. That's it, easy. Once your noting skills become proficient, you can move to level 2. In level 2, your practice turns to identifying and noting the causes, triggers, and results of your anger, as well as discovering and noting what resolves your anger. At level 3, you begin to focus on recognizing the subtle space that exists between stimuli and your anger. After familiarizing yourself with this space, you then work to expand and extend it. At level 4, you focus your awareness on discovering the moment within that space when you choose and decide that anger is the appropriate reaction. Finally, at level 5, as you become skillful at recognizing the moment of choice, you gain the ability to freely choose not to react, to not be angry, regardless of the stimuli. You transcend the anger not by suppressing the reaction, but through liberating your free will. Peeling the onion aspiration. We recite this prayer each morning and when needed. Today, I utilize introspection to uncover my true nature, practicing noting to recognize my patterns, habits, and their triggers. I do this to expose my many layers of conditioning in the purpose of mental freedom. Today, I will realize and expand the space between stimuli and my reactions, while developing control over my conscious and subconscious choices. Today, I transcend reactivity by abiding in stillness, and float above worldly concerns by maintaining an objective distance. The 3-breath meditation. Practice the 3-breath meditation with mantra throughout the day. While taking 3 conscious breaths, on inhale, silently say present. At the top of the inhale, silently say aware. On exhale, silently say introspective. What to expect from this practice? The aim of this practice is to come to terms with our external and internal processes and behaviors. When starting this practice, we start to uncover obvious patterns. But as we become more accomplished, unseen patterns start to become evident. It is at this point that the practice begins to reach into the subconscious, gradually peeling away and removing deeply rooted layers of misunderstanding, habitual views, and behaviors. With each layer we remove, an incremental level of freedom is gained. Of course, the virtues of freedom are clear: freedom from injustice, oppression, poverty, violence. But Buddhism asserts that it is mental freedom that is true liberation. Freedom from fear, ignorance, anxiety, obsession, greed, envy, pride, conceit, hatred, and self-doubt, self-criticism, afflicted emotions, and uncontrollable thinking. This includes freedom of choice, action, and reaction. Gaining mental freedom is true liberation and the true attainment of awakening. The practice of peeling the onion may at first sound like a long process. For many of our patterns are deeply habituated and take time to modify. But don't be discouraged. One thing that is always overlooked is the fact that the more we work on ourselves, the more skilled we become, and the faster we progress. Remember that the practice and its benefits are incremental, meaning any progress made correlates to direct benefits. Other methods of working with patterns and habits. Envisioning the mechanism of our patterns. I found one of the most effective methods for working with patterns is through understanding and envisioning the current scientific model. A scientist friend shared a wonderful way of understanding this model. He explained that our patterns and habits exist as neural pathways, which can be imagined as trails through the woods. In a forest, if you want to create a new trail, you simply start traversing a new path. Slowly, as you continue to use the path, the grass begins to die away, eventually becoming a proper trail, while at the same time, the grass on the trail you abandon begins to grow back and eventually disappears. This is the same way our patterns, which exist as neural pathways, function. In practice, replacing unproductive habits with more productive habits is a very effective method for self-improvement. You begin by envisioning a habit, like eating ice cream every night, as being similar to a trail through the woods. Next, choose a new productive habit to replace it with. Maybe it's snacking on fruit. Now, when the craving for ice cream arises, envision the two trails before you. Ask yourself, which trail do I traverse? Do I head down the old unhealthy trail, which will only further enforce it? Or do I traverse the new healthy trail, understanding that each time I choose it, it becomes easier to follow? Try actually picturing the neural pathways in your brain. With that said, occasionally heading down an old trail isn't a big deal. But the more we stay off it, the easier the transition to the new habit is made. Seeing choices as patterns. One night I was walking home and I eyed a McDonald's restaurant, and the desire for a fast food feast began to overwhelm me. However, at the same time, the thought arose, I would be better off going straight home and making a healthy meal. It then occurred to me, my choice shouldn't be based on what I feel like consuming at the time, which is merely a pattern, but instead the proper choice should be based on what pattern I wish to reinforce. Meaning, instead of asking myself, what do I feel like eating? I should be asking myself, what dietary pattern do I want to encourage? The proper choice in this case is made easier when recognizing that our tastes, our likes and dislikes, are merely patterns we have acquired through our lives and not as substantive as we would believe. Using noting to understand others. Noting, as mentioned earlier, is an essential step in the practice of peeling the onion. But noting can also be used to examine other people's emotions, intentions, character, behaviors, etc. The practice, usually done in silence, is applied externally towards others. By observing and noting other people's patterns, we gain insight into them and human behavior in general. This type of noting also helps us to remain more objective when interacting with others. For in the initial time it takes to make a mental note, space is created between the stimuli and the reaction, allowing for awareness, understanding, and skills to be applied. The important role of feedback from others. With all we have shared thus far about introspection, we cannot overlook the benefit of honest feedback from friends, family, colleagues, and community. Often others in our lives may have a more objective view of us than we do ourselves, having great insight into our attitudes, behaviors, and conditioning that we ourselves do not. If we are open to well-intended feedback, this can be one of the greatest sources of insight into ourselves and our reality. It is even more beneficial if they are fellow practitioners who share your path and aims, those who are also peeling the onion and understanding the importance of honest feedback within the practice. Q&A: questions, answers, and requested advice by practitioners. Question: this presentation of patterns, habits, and free will seems unique. Can you share its origins? Answer: it is embodied in the Buddhist teachings on karma, mental factors, right view, ignorance, samsara, no self, etc. As a secular Buddhist teacher, I strive to use less traditional religious or cultural terminology. Although I feel indebted to the countless teachers who work to preserve more traditional presentations upon which my work is dependent, I believe adapting fresh ways to understand and share the teachings to be highly beneficial. Question: could you elaborate on level 3 of the practice, discovering the space between stimuli and reaction? Answer: most people's minds are trapped in a relentless pattern of continuous thinking. In meditation, or any time we sit still and focus our awareness, we can become present, and for a brief moment, our thinking subsides. This is usually a practitioner's first encounter with the space between thoughts. Through ever deepening levels of awareness, you can then realize the space between choices and actions, desires and choices, stimuli and reactions, and drives and desires. Eventually, with practice, you can gain the ability to expand and sustain that space for longer periods, leading to a nearly constant state of sustained awareness. Question: how can I judge my improvement in this practice? I'm not exactly sure what the results of this practice look like. Answer: often, day-to-day improvement and benefits aren't always obvious. Some results develop so slowly you might not notice them. Clarity, discipline, reduced reactivity, spontaneity, etc. The greatest benefit of this practice is the increase in understanding and acceptance of yourself, which is a gradual and subtle process. This brings a calm contentment and acceptance to your life. My most useful piece of advice is to begin by first cultivating a positive enthusiasm and curiosity towards self-exploration, while employing a nurturing and therapeutic approach towards the practice. Question: I can never remember to practice introspection. Any tips? Answer: my advice is simple. Do the best you can. The first part of any practice is to learn to incorporate it into your daily life. Begin by accepting it. Yes, I'm forgetful. No big deal. Once you've accepted the fact, then get creative. Set alerts on your phone, take notes around the house, associate with community or friends who also embrace introspection and can be a means of inspiration and support. Slowly you'll find that remembering to practice arises more and more often, which can eventually lead to a constant or nearly constant mental state of continuous practice. Question: when practicing introspection, I sometimes feel fear, negativity, and/or strong emotions. Am I doing something wrong? Answer: not at all. The practice of peeling the onion is simply to explore without judgment whatever we uncover. Introspection is a way to shine light into the hidden corners of your mind, revealing aspects of yourself, including insecurities, you subconsciously may be trying to avoid. The first thing to do is to accept those feelings, if they're not too painful. Understand that although you might not initially like what you find, these feelings often need to be worked through. Understand that within your practice, you have a chance to work with these insecurities in a safe environment. By working with what arises, we often find our own antidotes to our difficulties. The secret is to go slowly. If the feelings are too strong, back off a little. Remember to always work with what arises in a gentle, nurturing, and therapeutic way. Learn how to remain comfortable while exploring the mysteries of your being. Question: sometimes my introspection gets out of control and I can't shut it off. Often my mind races and I have trouble sleeping. Is this common? Answer: yes, this is common. The remedy is balancing the practice with abiding in stillness. In many ways, abiding in stillness is the opposite of introspection, meaning where introspection is an active mental state of exploration and analysis, abiding in stillness is passive, a way of just being the observing witness to the present moment without mental commentary. Remember that daily meditation is very effective in balancing this practice while also aiding with many sleep disorders. If that doesn't work and you find yourself laying there staring at the ceiling, try this technique. What is usually maddening is not the lack of sleep, but your inability to achieve your aim of falling asleep. So instead of focusing on falling asleep, shift your aim to resting. While laying in bed, recite the word resting from time to time, which gives you permission to simply lay and rest. Hopefully, you can adjust your view to actually enjoy this time. Accept the fact that although sleep would be preferable, mindful resting can also be rejuvenating if the underlying anxiety is removed. Question: aren't a lot of patterns beneficial, aspects we don't want to get rid of? Answer: our aim is not to eradicate our patterns, but to understand and gain control over them. We appreciate this mechanism of utilizing patterns as an extraordinary, effective, and beneficial tool for managing our lives. Our aim is freedom of choice, to be able to decide for ourselves what patterns and habits we wish to keep and those we wish to transcend. Question: doesn't accepting ourselves as whole and complete contradict the notion that there is room for improvement? Answer: not at all. We can accept ourselves as whole and complete while still acknowledging that we exist as dynamic processes in a state of constant evolution. We can also accept ourselves as remarkable entities who, from time to time, require some fine-tuning. Question: what do I do once I've uncovered an unproductive pattern or habit? Answer: you watch it, assess it, and try to understand it. Often shining the light of awareness upon our hidden patterns is all that is needed to start working on them. We begin by trying to understand the nature of the pattern, where it arises from, its triggers, and its results. We can then experiment to see what techniques are beneficial in transcending or promoting the pattern. Question: is there a point where peeling the onion is finished and I've reached perfection? Answer: traditional Buddhism says yes, asserting a final state of perfection referred to as full enlightenment or Buddhahood. However, for me, this seems unlikely. It's hard to imagine a state in which a person can't improve further. However, I do believe we can reach a point of contentment where we feel we are happy with our efforts and the results, at which point we may decide to just abide in our awakened state of being. But that is a choice each one of us must make ourselves. Important notes. If difficulties in your practice can persist, it's always a good idea to seek additional one-on-one advice from a qualified teacher. Meditation, mindfulness, and Buddhism were not intended as medical therapy. For those who suffer from mental, social, or emotional disorders, it's always best to work with a therapist or specialized teacher in the field. Currently, there are a growing number of therapists and special teachers that can instruct patients in meditation, mindfulness, and Buddhist practice. Lastly, if for some reason you feel vulnerable, unstable, or just a bit down, reach out to others, be it family, friends, or professional caregivers. There are so many wonderful people in the world who wish to help others. And that brings us to the end of Patterns, Habits, and Free Will and the practice of peeling the onion. Thank you for listening. I hope this text was both beneficial and inspiring. Please be sure to check out my download library for free Buddhist study material at tenzintharpa.com. And just a reminder, if you find my work of value, consider making a donation at my website. Thank you.